What is going on? So I'm going to be doing a how to install a 300 in your Grom on a 2017 or a Honda Grom SF. I'm going to be doing a build series for this, so it's going to be multiple episodes and will be posted on certain days of the week. That will all get put on social media. I'd like to welcome you guys to Moto-vation. This is going to be a build series for most things on two wheels. We'll have full bike builds showing you how things were built, how things were put together, why they came together the way they did. And we're going to go from builds to part installs. So one week you may see part of a build, one week you may see a whole build, the other week you may see an exhaust get put on, or how to change your oil. There's gonna be a whole bunch of different things that we'll have going on the channel. We're gonna have a lot of fun. The idea behind it is to motivate you guys to get out there and do your own builds. Get out there and wrench on your own bikes to where you're not paying hundreds, thousands of dollars for somebody else to build it. Instead, you're spending tens, 20s, hundreds, $1,000 on your bike and on tools. Enjoy putting in the work and the time. But to make it fun, to show off what other people are building, to get you guys out there and wrenching. So I hope you enjoy and come along for the ride. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the build. So for the first episode, we have my Honda Grom. It's a 2017, and we're gonna put a 300 swap in it. My bike already has a bunch of different things done, so let's get into it. So there's obviously a bunch of ways to do the wiring. How I did it was I used a CBR 250-300 harness and mated it to a 14 to 15 Honda Grom harness. I did it that way because I had a harness and I knew I needed to chop it up, so I just wanted to build the whole harness myself anyways. I didn't want to use the 300 controls. You have to cut the harness up anyways to use the plug for the gauge cluster to use either a Grom cluster or a CB300F cluster. So if you want to go about just buying most of it, you could buy a CB300F harness and you could buy the cluster down the road. It goes to 12,000 RPMs, or the Grom one goes to 10,000 RPMs. So I'm obviously not the ringleader in doing this. There's been many other people before me and the people that advised me on these things that did 250 swaps into Honda Groms and stuff. A big shout out to Chaz Sonato. He wrote up this little wiring diagram for himself and forwarded it over to me. I went through it a little bit more of an extent and put what each wire does, because I had an issue that my harness had colors that they seemed off. So what I'm gonna do, I'll put this into an actual spreadsheet, and that way you guys can download it. It'll be in the links below. Another thing you can go to is hondagrom.net. A guy named Derek W, Nima741, he did a full write-up on this. There's everything from wiring diagrams. I believe I have this. If I do, this will be linked below. It's super detailed, a lot of information. Some of it I didn't really need. He has information on how to mount the cluster for the 250/CBR. Another thing that you're gonna need to do is, if you're gonna run your Honda Grom ignition, which I assume that everybody is going to be so everything matches, you have to get a diode. I'll put information to the diode down below and an affiliate link to Amazon to buy it online. The diode that you need is at 1N4730A. You'll need to look that up. You'll need that. It's a Zener diode. On this write-up, there's something to do with how much voltage and stuff that goes through it is the reason for it. So I'll put that in the link for the description below. I'll try and keep it throughout all the episodes, so that way if you ever need to go back, you don't have to go back to this original video if you don't need to. So the things that you'll need to wire is the ignition. If you change the cluster, you're gonna need to use the cluster harness, AKA the plug off of your Grom. You're gonna need your headlight plugs and your tail light plugs. That's no matter the situation, pretty much, if you're using the cluster and your stock ignition. If you're gonna use the 250 ignition, so you have different key, you're gonna only be changing your headlight harness and your tail light harness. Everything else pretty much should be exactly the same, and you may have to extend some wires in some places, or once you get on the bike, you might wanna shorten everything. So if you're a neat freak about the wires and having things not packed into certain areas, so you're gonna wanna do it on the bike, lay the harness out once you put the motor in, and plug everything in that needs to be plugged in, snip things, trim them, make them all nice and neat. I, for the most part, didn't have anything that was really different or awkward. So the thing to know is from OG Grom, SF Grom, 250 and 300, depending on the year ranges on the 300 and 250, the actual switches are different for the plugs. Where the throttle cables come out is in a different area. So on some of them, they come out the bottom, which is perfectly fine. It still all works the same. On the Grom, it comes out the front. If you want to do as little wiring as possible, get the controls that match the harness. So you're buying a 250 harness, just buy the same year controls. So that just makes it super simple, makes it way easy. I didn't do it that way. I found out the hard way that SF and the OG has different controls. I had a whole spare parts bike, so I just swapped the controls. So before you put in the actual wiring harness, you're gonna want to install the motor. So install the motor. Once you have that all in place, then start installing the wiring harness. The reason for this is because there's a couple areas where it's super tight to put wiring in. So you're gonna need to have the motor in, but not tight, just have it loose so you can kind of move things around and get the actual harness in there where you want it to be. These two are off the Grom harness. They need to go onto this harness. This is for the headlights. So what this is to put an SF headlight on a 14 to 15 Grom. So you need to have this to be able to make the SF headlight work. I'm gonna get these soldered onto here. What this is for is to remind me, because this is for the ignition, so that's gonna get wired into this. I'm gonna wire this up, then after that is the tail light. It's just super time consuming. Make sure you take your time, make sure all your solder points are really secure. Make sure I go over them like multiple times, too many times. All right, not done, but almost. So you will see right here, this looks a little crappy because I forgot to put this on. We got our headlight harness on, gauge cluster harness, tail light and blinkers. This all looks pretty much like factory, but this looks completely factory. All right, so first thing I want to do is I want to measure the clearance between everything. So I'm going to take this off the stand. I'm going to figure out what we're at. Why? Because this was always the thing I was curious about, was how much lower does the motor sit? On my bike with this Yamamoto exhaust, it's hard to do with one hand. I have about 5 inches of clearance. Now, it's known for everybody's height. The bottom of the Grom motor is about 9.5 inches from the ground. So 9.5 inches, and I only have 5 inches from here to the ground. So we'll see if that changes or improves with everything I do, the new exhaust that I'm gonna put on this. So I put a little coating on here just so when I'm dropping tools it's not too loud. I live in an apartment complex, so you know, trying to be nice. So one thing we're gonna do is we're gonna look closely at the motor, just kind of see how this sits versus where the other one will. I don't have a oil cooler. I do have my key relocated here. This is the first time I've ever like said anything publicly about it, but I don't think this is gonna be able to stay here because the radiator is gonna. So, just thought I'd get some close-ups so you can see. You see I have a small 420 chain. That's gonna be switched to a 520. Alright guys, so that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Get over and check out our Facebook, our Instagram. All the links will be down below and at the end of this video. So I hope you had a decent time, learned a few different things. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below or send us a message on one of our socials. So other than that, see you next time. I welcome you. I welcome you. I welcome you. I welcome you to. I welcome you to. I welcome you. I don't know what it's gonna be called. So, what else? Remember, don't be thirsty, but stay hungry.